with CEOs and millionaires. I've never seen my vision be more crystal clear. Look in the mirror, see the change in who I used to be. I kept going, knew success would come eventually. But ask about me back then, they said I wouldn't make it. Nowadays they doubt less and tend to ask for favors. Poetic music, that's realness, don't let them tell you different. And if you ever lost in doubt, then follow your intuition. These words of wisdom is for those who's trying to find their purpose. Don't be living just to die, cause only death is certain. I'm working hard so I can toast to my accomplishments. Cause see, I lost it all and I ain't been the same since. I'm more focused, more ambitious, more everything. Grew up with nothing, now I appreciate the finer things. I know it's real when at the shows they ask for autographs. And now they know the name, they ain't gotta ask. Yeah. They ain't gotta ask.
Record. All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Back at it with the business hour here with Jordan. Welcome back, everybody that's listening, and thanks, Jordan, for doing this.
Yeah, man.
So, yeah, we just wanted to kind of get right into it. We got a couple hot topics that we kind of found interesting here in the last week or two. Obviously, both of us have been kind of busy traveling and, different time zones and things like that. So let's just jump right into it. Jordan wanted to talk about a little bit about the changing workforce and kind of pushing into, a lot of times this hybrid model of working from home, and we're kind of seeing a lot of differences. And I think some of these trends that we saw in the last year are kind of here to stay. So Jordan can elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a couple things happening here. And really there's three things that stick out to me. One is, I think people today they're beginning to shift the value that they place in higher education, institutional learning, the whole traditional model of college. And so what I thought was so interesting was the rise of these sort of like modified income sharing agreements. So this is just one of those things. Income sharing agreements, they're not new, but so basically it's, hey, I'll find you a job, it's sort of like a headhunter kind of, but what we're seeing now is like these niche oriented ISAs. So, and I'll kind of give you an example. Like on delta.io, basically what they do is they basically, it's a 15-week long course, and they teach you how to be what's called a growth marketing expert. But they pay. So how these things work is they give you the education up front. You can pay up front, or they do it, and then they find you a job within like a startup, Silicon Valley, somewhere really cool, and you get awesome mentorship, but you don't pay anything until they find you a job at those companies. I think it's like as soon as your salary is over 40K, then they take 10%, something like that.
Okay.
And then Lambda School, go to lambdaschool.com. That's another cool one. And they basically teach you how to be a web developer or a data scientist. And it's the same kind of process. Like they, you get hands-on placement, teaching, and you're going to get placed in a pretty cool company. And you haven't paid a thing until that salary kicks in. So
got it.
I think that's really cool. The other two things I would say are, I think it's really cool how we're starting to shift to what's called a pay per project type framework. And what I mean by that is, this notion, and I think COVID has had a lot to do with this too, but when you think about it, the whole concept of like human capital and hiring employees, it's kind of archaic, right? Like just hiring somebody just to essentially like sit in a chair and be reactive to anything that may happen. I understand that's not how like all jobs work, but at its core root, like, hey, here's the role, here's the problems that might happen. Maybe they haven't happened yet, but if they do, you're going to sit here and respond to them. And hopefully what I pay you and what you do kind of equals out, right? Like, it's kind of inefficient. And so I think what we're going to see more of is sort of this, this pay per job, pay per contract type shift. And that kind of, I guess, segues into some really cool stats. So like we're seeing a rise in $1 million one person businesses, right? So like if you haven't read these two books, I would highly recommend it. The first one is the $1 million one person business. The second one is exponential organizations. If you own a company, starting a company, entrepreneur, you have to read exponential organizations. It'll totally change the way you think about running a company. But 2018, check this out. 2018, there were 41,666 quote unquote non-employer firms, right? So these are businesses that have no employees except for the owner. So 41,666 of these one person businesses hit $1 to $2.5 million in revenue. All right. And then 965,000 of these one person businesses brought in 250, so $250,000 to 999,000. And they all came from these 6 categories: e-commerce, manufacturing, informational content creation, professional services, which is, marketing, consulting, public speaking, personal services. So like fitness coaching,
right,
and real estate, which, I mean, that's freaking insane. Right. And so that was 2018. This is just, it's gone up exponential. And when you look at this list, Ben, like really none of these categories were affected by COVID. Like, okay, you might be able to look at like fitness coaching, right? But I guarantee you rich people found a way to keep their health coach coming over, or their personal trainer,
Right.
So I don't know. All that fascinates me. I really think, just even my own vision of kind of what I wanted for my business, just having this giant office with employees kind of sitting there, like, I'm not sure I want that anymore. I kind of just, I want to be able to, next time the world burns, I want to be able to like hop on a boat, open my laptop, and, talk to the people that I think are crucial to my business, wherever they are.
And do you think that COVID just accelerated what was going to happen anyway? Like we just got to it sooner?
I think so. I totally think so. I think also, if anyone out there hasn't read or heard of Naval Ravikant, you got to check him out. I mean, it's entrepreneurial philosophy, maybe, if that's what you want to call it.
Right.
He talks about like the four types of leverage, and the old forms of leverage were permission-based forms of leverage. And what he means by that is the traditional forms of leverage are human capital and financial, right? So human capital is, hey, Ben, can you come work for me, right? Like I can't make you work for me. I need your permission. And then financial, right? So, hey, bank, can you give me a loan? I have a great business. I just need capital, but I need your permission. And, what he always encourages people is to move to these 2 other permissionless forms of leverage, which is media / internet, and then software. And so I think there's like this natural pivot point when you try to transition from, the former 2 to the latter 2. And I think step 1 is operating from a pay per project type framework. I know that's kind of all over the place, but hope that makes sense somewhere.
No, it does. It's one of those things where I think that unfortunately people have to be self-starters, and I think the way the education system is set up is for employees. And if you don't realize that fast enough to where that either your family has enough cachet to pay for your education, or like how we did it, generally you have the government pay for you based on services that you provided the government, you're putting yourself in a bind by going to school for that many amount of years of not having a job and then just sitting on this perpetual debt, like going through it. I mean, you're just behind the power curve as far as like trying to get out of that hole. And I think most people that have went to college realize that, but we don't do enough to push the envelope in a sense of ensuring that people that don't go to college are aware that you don't have to go to college to be successful.
Dude, 100%. And, I'll kind of add something there too, is it is so taboo to talk about not just money, but how you make your money. Right. And I think self-employed people do the universe and young people such a disservice by not talking about how they make their money. If you're making a good living, one of the best things you can do is, one, share your mistakes, but two, tell people how you do it. Next time you're at a bar and there's a 20-year-old bartender that seems a bit inquisitive, explain it to them, right? Explain how you're monetizing some abstract asset or some unique ancillary media role. I just think it's so, like, I had a drink at a bar not too long ago, and this kid was getting some advice from his mom and dad, or maybe I think it was uncle, and it was like the worst advice ever. And basically, like, it was so binary to him, like, I'm gonna graduate college and I have to do this or this, and that's it, and I can't make over this amount, and I have to live here. And I gave him like 3 ideas, and he didn't even know those options existed.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think we have a service, or I think we have an obligation. If you make a mistake, tell somebody about it. Like, I had a buddy, he had a software, he's got like a software company, and it was hacked. He made a terrible mistake of basically he consolidated everything. So what he did, he helped clients grow their software businesses, and then he took a cut.
Yeah.
But he kept everything on one server, and then he outsourced it to some developer.
Ooh.
And I guess they were complicit in this scheme, and it was a total mess. But by him just sharing me all that, I felt like I was in a better place, if I was going to do something similar.
Well, that's the one good thing about the tech scene, I think, is that, a lot of times, so I've seen it in Israel, I've seen it in Colorado, where they have like fuck 'em up Friday, where you just like, because there's so much failure in those kind of, jobs and whatnot. And so people they just talk about like how they've just like fallen on their face, either from the company perspective or personally. And like, maybe they've like had a personal account in that fuck up, but it's an interesting model. I think it just it normalizes failure in a lot of ways, which I think is good.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point,
because we live in a society where you just can't screw up anything. Like getting a DUI this time, like during these periods, it's like a scarlet letter. Like, you're not gonna...
It is. But somebody brought up a good point, and I'm not. I'm taking a risk here by saying this on a podcast, but I had a buddy, and to be honest, he's kind of an atheist. However, he's a really smart guy. He said one of the reasons why entrepreneurship in America was able to I guess, I'll kind of back up. One of the reasons why America was so successful in fostering an entrepreneurial system and attitude and belief was sort of loosely tied into the Christian roots, in the concept of forgiving, it's okay, if you fail, don't worry, it's it kind of sort of ties into like the whole forgiving model. It's like, hey, it happens, you sin, it's don't worry, just get him next time. And
right.
I thought that was interesting. I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, yeah, it is a startup nation in itself, you're floating across the ocean of the unknown to land in a place to live out your life. There's nothing more risky and startup than that. So as far as the pilgrims that landed initially. So, but yeah, it's. I think it's ever changing. I think that I'm in the same boat as you. It's gonna be very tough working for somebody in the capacity, if I push into the finance realm and things like that. But it's more of a conduit to excel what I'm already doing personally. I think, down the road to kind of glean that information on how the other side works and thinks, and be able to utilize that to build something a little bit bigger, better kind of thing. So, I definitely enjoy kind of running my own show. But at the same time, there's obviously pros and cons to everything. The lone wolfing it, that the kind of, I can do that. I've been doing that a lot, but I miss camaraderie amongst a group and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the only downside, I think, to some of the work. If you're not a self-starter, or you need people to enhance your, energy and things like that, then definitely think about entrepreneurship in a different way. It's not that it can't be done, but those are the downsides of that, and they play into probably your, detrimental, like skill sets in that sense. Like if you constantly need people around to get you going, that kind of thing. So,
well, and they don't always have to be mutually exclusive. I think one of the things that held me back for so long was this misconception, this sort of dogma that, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. That's who I am. And I will not work for somebody, and I do it my way. And, the more I talked to other successful people and listened, I was so surprised at how often I would hear some multi-millionaire that I looked up to say, oh, man, I wish I could work for so-and-so, or how cool would it be to work for so-and-so? And I didn't think, I was like, why are you saying that? I thought you weren't, that's not what we do as entrepreneurs, and there's just, I think there's something to be said for the learning curve that can be shortened, whether it's through a mentor, whether it's through, a temporary, I hate to say it, boss.
Yeah.
But
so how do you, are you a big advocate for mentors, or?
Oh, dude, yes. Check out. So I'm sure everyone's heard of the book 48 Laws of Power, right? It's written by Robert Greene. It's probably Robert's most popular book, but his second favorite book of his that I've read was called Mastery. And so, so what Mastery taught, there's a whole chapter about mentorship, and it's pretty cool. And it basically talks about the importance of that phase. And what I found interesting in that was that mentorship process, not sometimes, but it typically ends badly.
Yeah.
Which is, it's just kind of how it is. So that was cool. But then there was a guy who talked about getting the benefits of entrepreneurship without the risk. And so what he would do is, when he exited college, he only took on jobs with startups. That's all he did. And he would opt for stock options. Mm-hmm. So he would do an amazing job, take bits of equity in these companies, help the company grow, and then he would move on to a different startup. So he built notoriety, he built all this credibility, and then, his bank account grew exponentially. So his network grew, his bank account grew, just his knowledge now, in product creation. I thought that was a great framework.
Yeah, no, the Japanese have kind of a saying where, like, you have your birth father and then you have your second father. When you look for that other person that, like, generally your father is going to kind of have an apex as far as like what he can teach you, like on how to be a man, so to speak. Sure. But then the second father, so to speak, he really ups the ante because he doesn't have the emotional attachment to you in the same way yet, and so he can push you further than your birth father. I always thought that was an interesting kind of concept, but you have to go seek that second one. It doesn't just come to you generally. So, it's fascinating was with some of the psychology. That's why I love business too, like the psychology aspect and the needs and wants between the difference, the people that are involved and things like that. And that stuff is like constantly changing. I deal with that on a regular basis where folks come into it. Everybody comes in, like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then like the first sign of hardship in some ways, people, I think, get taken aback because they're not used to, like, pandemic, for example, like that's something. Mm-hmm. Luckily I've had a failed business before where like I didn't panic because it was just something that I knew I could withstand as long as you have the cash flow and the assets to kind of to work with and things like that. So,
well, and that also goes back to fragility. I know. So Nassim Taleb talks about that a lot. About becoming less fragile, and part of that comes into to obligations. And Mark Cuban has a saying, obligations are the ultimate destroyer of destiny.
Yeah.
And so like, and I'll give you an example. I'll be a little vulnerable here. I had a huge position in this one company that I knew everything about, and I knew what I was going to do. I just didn't know when I was going to do it. My timing was a little off. That was my destiny. My destiny was to make a lot of money off this because I did my homework.
Yeah.
Right. Did my due diligence. My obligation was I needed to pay my taxes, and I didn't prepare. Did not prepare. Right. So that was my obligation. So I sold shares in that company that at the time wasn't doing anything to pay my taxes. And 2 days later, I was at Chuck E. Cheese's with my second oldest, and I opened my phone, and this company had taken off. It was I think 3-4x.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I'll never forget that.
That's a great story, man. Speaking of kind of market winners and losers, I got to give you some props here. As far as I was listening to Aswath Damodaran and the NYU professor, and he just put out something here, and I'll share the screenshot here. But for multiple advanced sharing. But basically, he was saying that the winners and losers of last year obviously did ridiculously well, like over the top. But then you go to the folks here. There you go. You could see that. And so it broke it down by sectors. And so if you look from on the spreadsheet here, like from 320 to the end of the year, you look at consumer discretionary. It's broken down all the industries by their sections and how well they did last year, and based on just U.S. firms. And so you look at consumer discretionary is 125,000 or 125%. Energy, did okay, but it was down to 65%. But if you look from last year, from basically January 1 or this year, January 1 to today, like energy, and those are some of the stocks that you were mentioning are the ones that are killing it right now at about 21%. Financials are up. So Square, think of the fintech kind of folks in that sense, Cash App, PayPal, things of that nature, especially since they pushed into the allowing to buy Bitcoin over their platforms and things like that. And then obviously real estate is booming. Materials based on construction and things like that are up. And so the things that were kind of lagging comparatively to what was killing it last year are up in that sense. So kudos to you for sticking to your guns on that. And then, with that, I mean, as the world's opening up, we're going to see a lot of trends in travel and other things in some of those areas as well. I think probably around summertime, where folks are just wanting to get out of their rut, so to speak, and doing the same things at home, and going to feel more comfortable traveling once they get vaccinated and stuff like that. So I think airlines, I think hotels, I think those kind of companies are finally going to get a breath of cash flow coming their way. So
yeah, Yeah, for sure, man. And I think, whenever you invest in a stock, in a company, and I think just the way I worded that, I need to hold myself accountable. A lot of times, people, they view it just as investing in a stock, not in a company. And I think whenever you invest, you should look at two things. One, you should look at the underlying commodity asset sector, right? That's a big thing. But I think you should also know what that unique value prop is for that company. So like if you invest in a gold mine, right? Okay, cool. Gold's a big part of that. Let's look at how that industry has been doing. But what's that value prop for that company? Okay, well, they're actually tied in with the government. The government's not going to let this part fail. This company doesn't have any debt. They're good for this. I think maybe sometimes that's where people, kind of go wrong. They focus on one or the other, and that's it.
Yeah, you definitely have to look at what makes a company unique compared to obviously the competition, or what's their competitive edge. And then secondly, do they have some kind of IP or some kind of contractual advantage from a government perspective, from a municipality perspective, things like that. And folks, I don't know if they have the time to do that kind of research. Obviously, if you and I are both interested in these kind of things. So I think even though we probably shouldn't, spend an extra 30, 45 minutes deep diving into an S1 or something like that to go into that space. Like, for example, I've been doing that with Compass Real Estate, who just is going public. And they've had to tone down their IPO because of the simple fact that they couldn't have enough buyers. And I think the S1 reveals what's been very hot. One is SPACs, two are companies that use software to assist in their overall operations, but they want to claim software numbers because the multiples on software's companies is a lot higher once they go into the public sphere as far as the valuations are concerned. And at the end, I think when you look at WeWork, when you look at some of these other companies that are emulating software companies, they're not. They're using software in a sense to enhance what their overall mission is. And that's it. And I think the public's not dumb when you allow them to get at the very bottom of the tranches of debt, because that's where common stock is. For those people that don't know, you get, like, if things go haywire, you get paid last in the company. So I think those things they're interesting in that sense. Do you ever like short companies? Do you believe in that, or
no? I mean, do I believe in it? Yeah, I do think it has its place. And we kind of spoke on this last time we talked. Aside from whatever moral or ethical argument one has, it does have a purpose. And you can even point to to Enron, how that whole scheme was uncovered thanks to shorting. But me personally, I don't, because when you short a company, your profit is finite, right? Like, it can only go down X amount.
Right.
On the flip side, when you go long, in theory, your profit is infinite. And so I'm more comfortable there. That's what I like. I like finding catalysts for buying something as opposed to, hoping that's, So I don't know.
No, I'm in the same boat. I like to be part of the company's story in a sense, right? And so I get to vouch my opinion with that in some sort of way by actually investing in that particular company. And generally it's based on, for me anyway, I'm betting on the jockey and not the horse. I'm betting on the people 100%. that are have been there before, that really for me, what I look for is a general failure in life in some way, like somebody that's really like had some kind of idea and like really, in all honesty, like if once the stick gets off that guy, Adam Newman from WeWork, if he were to get another company going, I would bet on him hard because he has so much to prove. Yeah, because he has so much to prove that he wasn't some hack or some kind of wannabe Steve Jobs kind of thing, you know, like selling real estate and things like that. Like I think he's really he had a nice idea and it just kind of got to his head, you know, and somebody throws $4 billion at you and says, you know, like, make it rain. You're going to make it rain, you know?
Dude, I think that is so cool. So, I don't know enough about him to have a huge opinion. I know he made a couple big mistakes, huge mistakes. One of those mistakes was pretty arrogant. You know, I'm from what I understand, he took something to the company, or he leased back something to the company, or I forget what.
Yeah, a bunch of things, but there's a documentary on Hulu if you have Hulu.
Yeah,
and go watch that then. And we watched it here, and it was interesting. He sold the naming rights to We.
Yes,
and he had it and he sold it back to the company for like $15 million. He ended up giving that money back.
Yeah.
But stuff like that, and then like he was pushing his wife into like a more of a COO kind of realm, and they were just trying to create this kibbutz like scene where you would live there, you would work there, you could have kids, and they would be, you know, like schooled in the same areas, you know, like maybe different floors of a building. It was just too much. And if they just kept with the office space, and I think now once they've cut all the fat and all the bull crap, like WeWork's gonna, like with the SPAC, they're gonna do really well here, I think, in the near future, just based on the fact that they're back to what made them unique. And so, like, as people like you or I, if we want office space, they have brand recognition around the world. Like when I was in Bogota, Colombia, traveling, there was a WeWork. When I'm in Israel, there's a WeWork. You know, and so like when you need office space, even if it's temporary for a month, you're going to go to someplace cool like that. And so with that, they have a brand still. It's going to move forward. And I think the company overall, now that they're just focused on strictly the rental thing like that. And they, you know, the good thing about having these contracts is they can renegotiate stuff based on COVID and things like that. Hopefully they'll be able to get down their fixed debt down and be able to really push the envelope in that sense.
Well, the reason why I said that was so cool, Ben, is because your opinion is so counter mainstream thought, right? So, and you didn't just say WeWork. You specifically said what's his name? If Adam Newman. Yeah. If Adam Newman does XYZ, you know, I would bet on him. And like that sort of definitive opinion that's, you know, counter what the masses think. I love that. And there's so many ways I can go with this. You know, you talked about SPACs. I don't know if you saw the SEC coming down hard on SPACs, which I think, honestly, that's going to be short, medium term bullish on equities as a whole. I think SPACs had the potential to swallow up some liquidity that the markets maybe don't need, but like. Right. So I think that's interesting. But you know, a counter opinion that I have is, dude, I think stocks may be a little, you know, overbought right now, but I think long term, dude, we are entering massive bull run coming.
Yeah, I think so too. As long as the interest rates stay the way they are, which I don't think they have any intention of pushing up. The 10-year bond is gone up a little bit, but nothing crazy. Once it gets to like 3, I would think 3.5, it would be competitive to where people would be like, all right, let's buy some bonds now, with the yield being that high. But yeah, I think it's an easy way to get in, not being an accredited investor.
Oh yeah.
You know, in that sense. Sure. And so that's something I think anybody that's just starting out needs to look at, and then obviously look at who's managing the SPAC. And so those are the key factors in that sense. You have to do your homework. Obviously, I would not put money in a SPAC if you don't know who's managing it and looking at their track record. Like if Carl Icahn started a SPAC, I would be very weary on
Yeah.
what he's buying, because what he tends to do is, you've heard of debt capitalization.
Yeah.
Debt recap, yeah, where they basically will leverage the hell out of these companies. They'll get what they need out of it, but they get their money back to go do something else, but they hold the equity, and if it pops, it doesn't matter to them, but they're able to hold on to those assets on their books to be able to do what they need to do on a grand scale.
Sure.
And that, as I'm learning more and more about like financial modeling and stuff like that, and how to do those things, those have been interesting to see the techniques and some of the things that folks are doing and how they've been able to maintain kind of hegemony in their own right, like pushing around people on Wall Street based on, the cash flow that they can pull together really quickly and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Have you read anything about how universities are essentially like part of the LLP, and they, have their endowment, and like, so for example, Harvard, will fund a lot of the tech company stuff based on the fact that their folks are in it. I always wanted to do something like that for veterans, have a veteran LLP or something like that, where we collectively, people that have been successful, you kind of get in based on, have to set some kind of metrics. I mean, obviously a DD 214 is nice, but I would prefer somebody to be like an accredited investor, or at least have some kind of, net worth in that sense. But then, we just go and do the exact same thing that some of these universities do in that same respect, and do it through a nonprofit arm, in that sense. That's
tough. That's really tough, man. I have such, and I'm probably gonna take so much flack from this, but screw it, who cares? I have such like a jaded opinion, and I say this as a veteran, right? I say this as an former infantry grunt, as it gets. But like, I have such a jaded opinion on these like veteran organizations today. I think veteran entitlement is real. I think it's a very real thing. And like I was talking to, like, I'm not going to say mentor, but someone that I kind of look up to, and it's really crushing it on the business front. And this guy's not a veteran, but he's like, hey, Jordan, I want to connect you to this veteran mastermind group. I think you could like seriously get a lot out of it. And since he said it, like, I took it. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, definitely, hook me up, man. Invite only, and the first session's free, and after that you pay X amount of dollars. And so I did this. I sat on for this, this first meeting, and it's like veteran entrepreneurs. Yeah. And like, there was one dude who's pretty cool. Like, he started this fintech company, and it's like a real company. And the stuff he was doing was like, I don't know, it was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Everybody else was like kind of, I run a horse ranch, I do like a coaching service or this or that. And like, one of the points of this was, like, there's a primary, there's a person that needs a problem solved, and all the other veterans are supposed to help them solve that problem. Right. And it just so happened that the call I was on, the dude who was the primary, he was the fintech owner. So you got some dude in a cowboy hat, right? And some guy who's like a sailor. Mm-hmm. And they're supposed to be responsible for solving this dude's problems. I don't know. I just felt so embarrassed. I was like, what's going on here? Sorry for the tangent. But
No. I think people will get a lot out of that. And just in a sense of, you have to find your, like, we both know that not every veteran is in an entrepreneurial mindset. They love, you have to think about the demographic. These are middle of America kind of folks that, probably were raised on parents like bringing their lunch pail to work every day, like putting in the hard grind and stuff like that. And that's what they're trying to emulate in their life. And I respect that to a certain degree, but you also have to kind of change with the times and know that those things don't exist in that same capacity, and that we're in the third industrial revolution right now, digital. And, you and I both know that there's plenty of people like, oh, screw computers, man. Fuck that.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, like, I don't know how you can say that, like, in this day and age. This is not 1999, like
Bitcoin, more like Bitcon.
Yeah, in that sense. And there's what I've gathered here, like, as I've networked here right after school, there's so many dudes that are like us that are just out there, like, getting it. And they had to pull away from the mainstream. But, like, once you get out of that realm, I've connected with so many people, like, in New York. Actually, through WeWork, Veterans in Residence is a program through WeWork where they allow to give free office space to veteran entrepreneurs for 6 months. And they have a mentor. And so you see guys that are, like, trying to figure it out. And then you have other guys that have full-fledged businesses and they're just using it for office space. And so depending on the trajectory of their passion project or their business, you're getting to tap into them on every different level of business. So, and I think you just, at this point now, you're kind of established and you'd rather be with more established folks. And if they just haven't figured it out yet, they will eventually, or they'll just end up getting in line and getting a regular job because... Like you said, responsibilities come in, taxes, kids, wife, things like that. And those things take precedence and you can't be too dreamy when you got to pay the rent, so to speak. So, trying to think. So another thing I wanted to mention too was, Anduril Industries is a company, an AI hardware company that's slowly been winning government contracts. So they had a guy from Oculus, which is the VR company that Facebook bought back in the day. He's left and he's created his own company where they're starting to win contracts for Border Patrol and some other agencies. And when you think about that, you think about SpaceX, you think about other things that are companies that are coming into the fold. How do you feel about, like, the commercial side of things, like jumping into the government contract world and kind of disrupting that scene?
Love it, dude. Oh my goodness. I think it's so awesome. When you look at SpaceX, right? Like, for so long, and if anyone hasn't read Elon Musk's biography, you got to do it. I mean, and I get it. Like, when did it come out? Maybe like 2015, 2014, maybe. Such a good read. And it's so funny, Ben. It starts off, the opening chapter, the author talks about when he met up with Elon at a bar, trying to convince him to give him the rights to write this biography. And during the meetup, Elon, he's looking over his shoulder. Like, he seems like, obviously, it's very evident he's paranoid. And the author kind of, like, asks him, like, hey man, what's up? And he says something like, oh, nothing. It's just, the fact that, like, everyone, he's like, there's a bunch of people that want to kill me. He's like, there's a lot of countries that want me dead. And, that you can kind of take it as hyperbole a little bit, but when you think about it, how many decades did Boeing just get, like, a blank check?
Yeah.
Or like, okay, Boeing, right? So, I mean, they would take this blank check and they would go buy all their parts, all their rockets from Russia, things that couldn't be reused.
Yeah.
There really were no milestones. They had no competition. Like, there was no impetus for them to really win big. And then you got Elon Musk, who, comes in, builds everything in-house in the States, kind of treats it like, Silicon Valley startup.
Yeah.
And, he's saving the taxpayers billions of dollars. Yeah, I love it. And he does it on Twitter, like,
oh man, he's comic relief on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that these companies they've kind of had when we look at it and look at the contract world and how those things work and how, general officers generally already have their jobs lined up to go play golf with their successor, as far as, like, making sure that the money flow is still going in that direction. I mean, it's a closed market system with very few people at the table. And I think hopefully that changes and the best product and the best folks win out in that sense. And I think this is just a start of that. I think these guys that have been around, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, all these other companies, they still have some runway here. But I think more of these techie folks, and I think it's a culture clash for them. I think the folks that are working for Google, working for Facebook and things like that, they obviously have a negative connotation towards government. But I think that's going to change here very shortly as they start to win contracts and folks start to leave and they realize, hey, this is guaranteed money. Like once you get in a sense of cash flow and everything else. And I think that's a good thing because then you're allowed to trial and error and get the best product out there as opposed to like having to always find investors and things like that. If the government's your backer, then you're just basically have created a commercialized R&D, company for the government to be able to have proprietary rights to any kind of IP that comes out of it. And I think that's the way to go. Israel does that a lot, where they have investments where, let's say, for example, we like a company that does drone technology or something like that. They found something new or whatever. Israel will match any dollar that we collectively put into the company as a matching thing, but they also have the same IP rights as we do as a commercial viable company in that sense. So they can take it and use the same technology. So they'll invest in it, and they know that 90% of them will fail, but one of them might hit, and it'll become the next Waze or the next whatever, and be able to utilize or move it. It's another one that they have over there for what do you call it? Like transportation. So let's say like a bus line is exceptionally full, so they can do a head count on a bus, and they'll release another bus on that route to enhance the user experience on that bus line, to make sure that people haven't, like, when you get there and on a subway or something like that and it's completely full, like they can auto predict times a day and things like that to make sure that another bus or another train comes by to pick everybody up around that heavy traffic time, stuff like that.
That's cool.
Yeah. I'm so excited to see some of that disruption and see other companies that, in you and I both know, labor in the contract world generally gets squeezed the most because you're independently working for some of these companies. And so with that, maybe tech will bring, or other companies from people from Silicon Valley will bring how they treat labor into the fold, into the government work again, and really enhance that to keep people around more long term, or keep people as employees instead of independent contractors. So you could really kind of create that continuity to build these R&D, kind of mechanisms for the government.
The first thing that comes to mind when you say that is, one of the problems that, I don't even know how to put this, but like, you have so many bright minds that should be going to solve, like, biotech problems, or maybe something at like a medical level, instead going to Wall Street, going to be like these quants for these for these big investment banks. I think that's so funny. Like, it's I don't know, I just think it's a case study on how money always just flows to where it's accepted the most.
Yeah. Could you imagine though, people that are going, because that was like that before, like when you read about people like talking about committing suicide if they didn't get into the war effort, like in World War II from Harvard, right?
Totally.
And things like that. And these people went back and they just created these amazing businesses that cared about people probably the same way they cared about folks in their squad or their platoon, know, like that was the real time of American growth, when they came back and they said, you know what, people over profit, I'd rather keep things around for 50 years. And like, I don't need to squeeze the margins to make myself feel better, but I know I've employed 50 people, in that sense. And I think when these tech companies and these other offerings, and the stigma and the stick from working for government, because a lot of people just think government's bad. And I think you and I both know that it's the people and the relationships, and it's very, very situational dependent on that thing. And you got to get more of those folks that are at the Ivy League schools and other folks that just have the talent to start working for government again. And that comes with quantifying their existence through the pay. And hopefully that'll come from these people bringing better talent into the fold and challenging the folks that have been running that stuff for a while.
A really good, again, I don't want to say case study. I hate using that phrase, but I feel like I've said it 5 times now. Check out. So read about Lee Kuan Yew, which is, for all intents and purposes, like the founder of Singapore, right? I think he passed away 2000. Man, it was, I don't know. I'm gonna screw the date up, but it was like sometimes in the early 2000s. But he was essentially the founder of Singapore.
Got it.
And his biography was incredible. I think it's called From Third World to First.
Yeah.
The Singapore Miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, incredible, man. Especially for like right now, kind of what we're going through as a country. He basically took 3 cultures that hated each other. Right? He took the Chinese, the Indians, and the Malays.
Yeah.
Found a way to blend them together. He took, okay, this is a tiny island. How do we get people? How do we form a military? Okay, well, we got to incentivize them. How do we do that? Well, we need them to own land. Okay, how do we invest money to buy home? Well, we do it like this. And how do we take these liberal philosophies and infuse them and then take these conservative parts and infuse them? And dude, I was fascinated by it. And he talked about, he would say some things that like were so outlandish, so politically incorrect, like how he literally made a speech one time about how smart Singapore men need to start procreating with smart women instead of just taking them on as sort of like these stay-at-home wives, and of course there was like this outrage, but he would then like Singapore would, so funny, they would send people to the States to get educated, but then to ensure that their people didn't just stay in the States, they would then have programs to bring them back.
Right.
So I thought it was so cool.
No, that's awesome, man. And we always try to say that, like folks aren't, looking in certain respects to, the physicality of people and how procreation happens. But when you look at the animal kingdom, when I went to South Africa, like we're exactly the same. You're looking for the strongest, the tallest, the fittest, and everything else in the same capacity. And like,
absolutely, when
somebody actually voices that in some kind of capacity, people are like, oh, that's so messed up. But everybody does it. Like you want to, if you're going to procreate, you want the best and brightest, gene pool to be pushing forward to maximize the longevity of the human species, right? We just haven't had any kind of, act of God, so to speak, or war in that same effort to take out a lot of people in that same way.
Totally.
We don't have those same, kind of the defense mechanisms are kind of like been muted because of our comfort in society, in that sense. And so I agree actually with what you were saying with that guy, what he's saying, you know, because we tend to do that, pair off, according to those things. So, but it has to be, and I'm reading a lot about the Israeli prime ministers right now, just as a side product thing, and just the nation creating is always interesting in a sense of like, are you bringing folks from outside to come in to be part of your tribe, so to speak, or are you just going to invest within the folks that you have? And so, like we looked at compared to America and things like that, that's always an interesting dynamic because when you're planning for that stuff, it takes 10, 20 years to see the results of any kind of macro decisions that you make.
Totally.
And so
yeah,
you'll never. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I totally cut you off.
No, I was just saying to see the fruits of your labor either go, like you could be retired, but you could be like, yeah, I've freaking got that right. Or man, I really screwed that up.
Yeah.
But to take 20 years, that's some delayed gratification right there.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think, like as an entrepreneur, obviously, the importance that I place on what the private markets do, I appreciate private markets and enterprise and, free capitalism. I probably appreciate those things better than the average person. But
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't want a strong government, right?
Right.
I mean, there's an apparatus to this all, if you've got the sickest kitchen, well, obviously you want you want the frame to that house to be strong enough to support that kitchen.
Yeah.
And so, I think government should be a shield, not a sword. But yeah, I want this show and dance to keep going. I think this is great.
Yeah, and I think people, they seem to forget, like, as much as people think that we're overregulated, like comparatively to other places, we're still winning. When you look at Europe and some other spots that just, they don't have it in the sense of the government backing to keep promoting the entrepreneurship and other companies. They like companies that have been around for 100 years because they know the tax revenue that comes from those companies and the mergers and acquisitions that happen from those companies will only help their social programs to keep going in that sense. And here it's just such a constant flow. Like the government doesn't care really in that sense as long as the production is there in that same capacity, and the fact that people will pay their taxes, so to speak. But we've had a lot of Janet Yellen put out recently. She wants a across the board corporate tax around the world, and I just don't think it's not gonna work because these companies have millions of dollars to spend on lawyers, and they will find the loopholes within any kind of system that's implemented in that sense.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think from a government perspective? What could they do for businesses? Let's say, like, is there a cap on if you're $1 trillion company? Let's say, like, say you hit the T word as far as valuation is concerned. In these companies, they pay no taxes. Do you think that is good or bad for the country, or the government needs to step up their regulation and their policy game? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, that's such a loaded question because, you say they pay no taxes, but they create XYZ in terms of infrastructure and employment,
Yeah.
I think if you're a country that wants growth, your biggest priority right off the bat should be protecting private property and intellectual property.
Yeah.
Right. If you can't do that, companies will not go there and they won't conduct business. Like China, they do a terrible job at protecting IP.
Yeah.
But that's at a macro level. For the little guy, private property is like owning a house. If I own the house and I know I'm going to get the title, the deed.
Yeah.
And no squatter is going to push me out. Well, then I'm going to improve this property. I'm going to make it really nice. But as far as regulation goes, I just think we need to be so careful. I love reading about, like Eduardo Saverin of, one of the co-founders of Facebook.
Yeah.
Right before Facebook's IPO hit, he denounces his citizenship, moves to Singapore, and cashes out his IPO, and doesn't pay taxes on that. Is that fair? I don't know. It's, but yeah.
If the rule is there, then don't complain that it's not there if you haven't closed that loop down. I mean, damn well that those things exist, and so I think the same thing goes for a lot of people. Is like they don't want government to mess with anything just in case they hit it rich.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's what one of the things that keeps all this going, the American way, is the notion that the little guy somewhere is thinking, you know what, that could be me.
Yeah.
It's not me right now, but it could.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And I think that's a good initiative from the government to allow that to happen, because like you said, if most companies are no more than like 50 to 100 people, right? Like maximum. And so with that, I mean, if you create that many jobs, like you're going to get the tax. The companies, you know, obviously they should pay something, but at the same time, you're getting that much in you know, tax revenue from all those people that are being employed. And so what difference does it make if the entity is paying it or the actual person that is being employed in that sense? And so we just need more folks to like create more companies.
Well, and I think dude, yeah, 100%. And I think one of the scariest things is that the people in charge now that are making these sort of regulations, they don't have experience in business. You know, I was reading a story. I was reading a book called Paddywhacked, which is the rise and the fall of the Irish mob in America.
Okay.
And it was, you know, definitely a guilty pleasure read, but they were talking about, you know, just how adroit the Irish were at infiltrating the political scene and understanding and having a solid social IQ. And back then, if you wanted to be at like any political level at the municipal level, any political post at the municipal level or higher,
right?
One of the unwritten requisites was you had to either be a former saloon owner or a former boxer. That's right. Great. That's in their mind. That's, you know, kind of what qualified somebody.
Right.
And obviously, as time goes on, you know, those metrics change. You know, and there was a time when, you know, having owned a company, that meant a lot.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like nowadays I think about, you know, people like Ben Bernanke, you know, his whole experience came from, you know, his time spent at this school, and then having that time at that school, he wrote a book about this, and everything was just based on theory.
Yeah.
And that's scary, man.
No, I totally agree. Unfortunately, that's just how freaking people are, you know, like, but like you said, those things are changing now. Thank goodness, because man, anybody that's like I have a friend of mine who is knee deep in like coding and stuff like that. And I had lunch with him the other day, and he's just bouncing around. He's a veteran, and he's bouncing around from program to program. I'm like, dude, I would not hire you. Like, you need to like go and like actually do some real work for somebody, do an internship, go and volunteer your help. Like, you're already coding and doing all that stuff. Just go to somebody and be like, hey, I'll give you 20 hours a week if you get me some real actual projects to work on. And nobody's gonna, like, if you are that forthcoming and like, this is what I want to do you mind if I work here, you like with your team and like actually do real projects for like 25 hours a week? Nobody's going to be like, I'm sorry, man. Right. It's like free help or very cheap help in a sense, but you get to gleam off of like how shit really works as opposed to theory, and throw it into practicality and, you know, be pragmatic about like your journey as well. 'Cause that'll open up a lot of doors. You might think you're on the right path. You might not even go there. Like, he wants to get an MS in computer science. Be like, cool.
Okay.
Now you've literally done nothing up until this point, like actual work in that sense. You've done all the case studies and things like that these programs have offered, but you have no practical application for any of that stuff. And so he kind of like, he's like, you know, like a little brother, like, you know, you're in the squad and this is your guy, you know, you're like, oh, he's carrying the pig. Thank you. Now let me show you what's up here. So, that kind of thing. And it's always, you know, but the difference now is that he's older and he's more receptive to listening. Like before, it's just like, yeah, man, I know what the fuck I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. And now he's really getting into it, where I think he's understanding because he's seen the trials and tribulations that I've had to deal with on a business level and other folks. And I'm just like, just make yourself the most marketable person where they can't say no. Yeah. And that's where you want to be. Sorry.
That's all good.
Uh,
I've had kids screaming in the back.
oh, okay. The fire team over there.
Yeah, exactly.
How's the baby?
Oh, baby's great, man. Strong, real strong, happy. So,
How old now? 2 months?
no, at four, almost 5 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Time's rolling.
yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much, man. I think we got every. Oh, you wanted to talk about Bitcloud.
Oh, okay. So real quick, there's no way we can like do a full deep dive on this, but if you haven't, I'm calling this right now. We're going to archive this. Obviously, it's going to be posted. This podcast will be immortalized. So I'm calling it right now. I think Bitclout. If you don't know what Bitclout, not cloud, but clout with a T. If you don't know what it is, go check this out. And I'm going to warn you, it's going to look so super scammy, cheesy. Like some Nigerian prince built this. I honestly think this is going to be the next big thing. So I'm going to do my best. It's going to be a terrible rundown, but basically, you were just talking about, man, if Adam Newman went on to do something, I would bet on him, right? Or, sometimes you talk about somebody and you're like, man, if I could bet on him, I would, right? Like, I just think he's a good dude, or I think he's going to go on and do big things. I think his influence is going to widen. Well, with Bitclout, you can finally do that. So imagine Twitter, right? But as your influence grows, man, okay, I need to back up a little bit. So
I can tell this is a big thing for you. You're very hyped,
dude.
about
It's
it.
huge. I'm kind of being conscious of time here too.
No, you're fine.
But so Bitcloud is essentially a platform. So first off, it's a coin, right? It is a coin. And then you can use it to buy other creator coins, right? So anyone can get on there and have a creator token. Now, when they launched this thing, what they did was they took anyone essentially on Twitter that had a blue check mark.
Mm-hmm.
They automatically made a creator coin for that person.
Okay.
Right. And you could go on there and you could take your Bitclout and use it to buy various creator coins.
Got it.
Right. And every purchase, a little percentage goes to that creator. Now, when they launched this and it got going, a lot of these creators hadn't, their coins existed, but they hadn't, hopped on because you have to make an account, right? So what they did was they basically messaged every celebrity, every person with a blue check mark, hey, your creator coins are here in your account. All you got to do is set up your account, log in, and then retweet this, and you'll get all of your coins. Okay, so that's kind of like, that's a terrible explanation, but
so they hedged on the personal brands to go
Yes.
in on something to create some kind of buzz in a sense of free stuff if you just go in there and check it out.
and it's an actual platform. It's set up just like Twitter. That's the thing.
Got
But like
it.
whenever you like retweet or like something or comment, like you're charged a little bit of Bitclout, and you're charged that because by commenting, you're actually gaining more influence.
Got it.
So as your influence expands, more people will buy your coin. And then what you can do as a creator is, you can incentivize ownership of that coin, so like you can see, okay, for my top 50 coin holders, I'm doing a lunch, in San Diego on this Saturday, and I'll be sharing like my top 5 strategies for this.
Got it.
So there's like so many cool ways. And so like I thought of, okay, Adam Newman, right? Like that's a controversial figure. That's a figure that, a lot of people maybe don't have a high belief in. So
Right.
like his coin perhaps could be down. But I truly believe, dude, this is going to be like the next big thing, not just the Bitcloud itself, but buying the right creator coins that are undervalued right now.
What would you say the difference between this and an NFT are?
Well, this is an NFT.
Okay. That's because it sounded exactly the same. It's just like this is a platform where people could be selling things, right? Or that coin particularly. It's almost kind of like the person's brand is like a stock, so to speak.
Right. So your brand now has a market cap.
Yeah.
Your influence now has a market cap, right? So like, so I can tell everyone listening to this podcast right now, right? Most of the world does not know me. Most of the world does not know who Jordan Linn does, right? But I can tell you right now, someday I will be a billionaire.
Right.
Right. So if you believe that, maybe you don't, so don't buy my coin. But if you do, you could buy my coin right now on Bitclout. And I'm fascinated by this, and no one knows about it. I think it's gonna just blow up.
Huh. No, I think it's very interesting. I would definitely go check it out. Bitcloud. We could talk more about it. Like next time, just maybe you go to the site and show an example. And kind of share a screen and stuff like that, and kind of give folks a little rundown on it, in that sense. Yeah,
for sure.
All right, man. Well, thanks for the wrap up on that. I think that was a good way to end this, and hopefully people are getting something out of it. Now that I'm home and I have regular internet, I'm actually going to Seattle for a little small gig here for about 2 weeks, so I get to go see the fam. That's where my mom and my brother live, and get to go hang out with them, but then be over there for about 2 weeks, and then we'll definitely get this up on YouTube. We'll try to push it on Friday, and should be good to go there. We'll have both YouTube, and it'll be available obviously everywhere on audio as well. So be the first uploaded video of the year.
That's the way to go, man.
Yeah, I'm super stoked, man. I actually interviewed yesterday a World War II veteran born in 1922.
Wow. That's awesome.
He was an EOD guy, bomb disposal guy, before EOD was even created. And so he was talking about that, dismantling stuff in Japan. He went to Oki, and then when after the war, he was in mainland Japan for up until like 1946, and he was just basically blowing stuff and taking stuff apart, the stuff that we dropped, the munitions that we dropped. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, he was amazing. He's like, hey, you want to go to dinner with me? I love the Olive Garden. I was like, dude, I will take you anywhere you want to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm super stoked. It's been really fun, like doing these oral histories and things like that. And I kind of want to get another segment too of maybe just a down and dirty of like folks that are like leaving the military, kind of give them a 15-30 minute window on like talking about their career and their trajectory so far and like where they want to go. I've been kind of networking and tying into folks, and like you said, like not everybody obviously is going to get invited, but like for example, this guy I'm talking to, he's a F-35 pilot and was a pilot. Now he's a pilot instructor, but he's getting out, 4 kids, and he wants to get into like private equity and stuff like that. And so just for him to have something to be able to share on a networking space, so somebody can like listen to that person as opposed to just simply reading, I think will be advantageous for a lot of folks. Because I mean, audio is kind of where it's at. That's something that somebody can do on the side and listen and still get something else done. Yeah, you're not just reading an email. That's awesome, man. Yeah. So yeah, good things are coming slowly. Once I get a little bit more time, it'll be good. I'm honored to be a part of it. Yeah, no, I think this is fun, and we should just build this momentum at least, every other week for right now, and then hopefully try to get it every week, get at least one in, and kind of go from there. All right, buddy. Well, take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Yeah, man. Take care. Have a good one. Later. The show is produced and engineered by myself, Ben, out of Denver, Colorado. Be sure to subscribe to our social media or wherever you consume content, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Big shout out to Mike Xavier. Thank you so much for letting us use your music as part of our show. Be sure to check him out as well on social media. And stay tuned for the next show.